Thank you. You will see that they have a new member. Z Kid is on the piano, and she not only contributes to their good sound, but your looks are much better. Yes. Well, I wanted to have a tumbleweed Christmas tree out in the lobby, but Brenda drew the short straw and didn't go home for Christmas. So we'll have to imagine it. As a child, Christmas seemed so slow to arrive. However, as an adult, I've usually wished for at least 1 or 2 additional days to prepare for Christmas's arrival. On the other hand, when it got here, I've always wished that Christmas Eve and Christmas Day would last just a little longer. After it's over, it seems to have come and gone so quickly. Returning home from the candlelight communion service to a quiet house and a tree that's been emptied of its gifts, along with many mixed feelings, is the feeling of relief. But there's also the feeling of emptiness. Sometimes I feel empty. It's like I'm a balloon that's suddenly been deflated. It's over. And I find myself asking, what's left of Christmas? At such times, I take down my copy of Texas author Robert Flynn's Seasonal Rain and read again one of my favorite Christmas short stories, Tumbleweed Christmas. It's a tale about Lucille, a 12-year-old girl whose mother had died the Christmas before. The story is set on a small farm in West Texas where she lived with her papa, a poor laborer who was overcome with grief. In the year following her mother's death, there had been no celebration of Lucille's birthday or of Thanksgiving, and there was no sign that Christmas would be any different. On Christmas Eve night, her papa told her that he would have to return to work, and when she requested to go into town with him to look at the lights and the decorations, he refused. After he left, she cried. On Christmas morning, Lucille arose to do her chores, resolved to be a big girl and, like her mother, to think of others besides herself. In the barn, she made a Christmas tree of tumbleweeds and decorated it with bits of tin foil and brightly colored yarn. She wrapped little presents for each of the animals, corn for the pigs, breadcrumbs for the chickens, and cottonseed cake for the cow. And she also wrapped her school picture as a present for her papa. Lucille was having so much fun singing carols to the animals that she didn't notice when her father slipped in the barn. He sat down beside her, put his arm around her, and helped her unwrap the gifts for the animals. Then he opened his gift from her. And when he saw what it was, he hugged her tight and said, "You're the only Christmas I'll ever need." And he kissed her on the top of her head. From his pocket, her father took a beautifully wrapped package and handed it to Lucille. Overwhelmed, she carefully unwrapped the blue velvet box, found that it contained a gold watch that her father had intended to give to her mother before she died. He had been working for over a year to pay for that watch. That was the reason there had been no birthday or Thanksgiving, and why he had worked Christmas Eve night. When he placed the watch on her wrist, she protested that she could never wear Mama's watch because she might lose it or break it. To which her father responded, "It's your watch, Lucille. You must take care of it. But if you lose it or it breaks, you still have this moment." Christmas, you see, Lucille, is not the watch. Christmas will last long after the watch is gone. Maybe that's part of the meaning of Luke's comment after Jesus' birth. Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Because the birth of her first child had moved so quickly and taken such unexpected turns, the moment and its meaning remained to be pondered long after the shepherds had gone back to their flocks and the angels had returned to heaven. And over 30 years later, Mary still pondered it all as she stood helpless beside the cross while her firstborn son was crucified. One of the most precious gifts that we've been given as human beings is the capacity not just to remember our experiences, but to reflect on their significance afterwards. God has gifted us with the ability to keep things in our hearts and to ponder them, to explore them over and over again long after the events have passed, to re-examine again an event's meaning and even to revise our understanding of it. The poet Robert Frost called our ability to ponder our master speed. You can climb, he said, back through history up the stream of time, that in the rush of everything to waste, you may have the power of standing still off any still or moving thing you choose. The well-known monk Thomas Merton spoke of the practice of pondering or reflection as contemplation and suggested that it be practiced as one of our Christian disciplines. So what are some of our Christmas experiences to be pondered in the relative silence and calm of the first Sunday after Christmas? Now, at this point in the sermon, I want to do for you what my pastor always does for me. He gives me permission to chase a rabbit or two while he's preaching. So I give you that same freedom to ponder whatever you wish about this year and Christmas, or to make a list for later when you get home. One of the things I remembered this Christmas and pondered as we drove home Tuesday night after being with many of you at the Christmas Eve service was my first Christmas Eve worship experience here in this church 18 years ago. We were new to Weatherford and to this church. Carol had already joined the choir, but because of past wounds, I was cautious about getting too involved. On that Christmas Eve night, she had come early for rehearsal, so later I came alone. I guess I wanted to test the waters, so I wore my overalls. Because my pew friend Mac Carter wasn't there, I sat on the next to back row by myself in the midst of some strangers who were dressed in festive attire. Nobody said anything about my overalls, except Carol when we got home, and she told me how embarrassed she was. But I've realized since that night that the great gift I was given that night was not toleration or even acceptance. Your great gift to me was a church home and a family. That it meant much, much over the passing of the years. That's a Christmas moment that I ponder often, and every time with growing gratitude. This year, I pondered the meaning of gifts, because the adults in our family agreed, probably with fingers crossed behind their back, not to exchange gifts between the adults, just for the little children. However, in spite of the ban, we gave our grown children gifts. When my daughter protested, I told her as long as I was alive, she was still a child, and I would do what I liked. But I agree with Lucille's papa in the story. My children are all the Christmas I'll ever need. However, on another plane, as I ponder the Lord's gift of the Christ child, it calls to mind God's great gift of life itself, which I appreciate more with every day that passes. My friend John Claypool used to say that God, who was life in the beginning, felt that the wonder of existence and the ecstasy of aliveness was something too good to keep to himself. So God decided to share the joy and the love that was at the very heart of his being. As a result of that impulse, the Holy One began to create, Claypool said. Not to get something for God's self, but rather to give something of God's self to us. Our Creator's generosity was the primal motivation that caused all things to come out of nothingness into existence. It was an act of total and complete graciousness. God's action in giving life to his creation and to us is, in C.S. Lewis' words, a bold deed of gift love. Your life and my life is a present from God. We didn't cause it. We didn't earn it. And as if that were not enough, when we made a mess out of the gracious gift that God gave us, he sent his Son to deliver us and to heal us, that we might have life and have it more abundantly. Although we're free to do with God's gift of life what we will, Christmas, I'm reminded that it is our Maker Redeemer's great hope that rather than keeping it for ourselves, we will pass it on. Indeed, because the gift contains the Spirit of God who gave it, life at its best is meant to be given for others over and over again, as generously as it has been given to us. But you know, life doesn't stand still, does it? Not for long. Contemplation is not a substitute for deeds. Rather, reflection is meant to precede our actions in order to better direct them and us. Even as we ponder the meaning of Christmas, Howard Thurman reminds us that the work of Christmas still waits to be done. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild nations, to bring peace among brothers and sisters, and to make music in the heart. Because the Spirit of Christ dwells afresh in our hearts this Christmas, let us get on now with the work of Christmas, loving as we've been loved. Amen.